We are here to bring you everything and anything surrounding Porsche. I'm Mike.
I'm Aaron.
And this is P-Car Talk. Welcome to another episode of P-Car Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm Aaron.
Special guest, Jim Goodlett. We are at the Chateau Goodlett right now.
At the library.
Yeah. And
in the library.
In the library. And we're his guests. And thanks for being our guest. And we're your guests at the house. So it's awesome. And we have some of our friends in the audience, too, that are going to be here joining us. So, you know, they can make as much noise as they want. This is like freeform. You don't have to be quiet over there.
The studio audience.
Yeah, exactly. You guys can get rowdy. It's fine. But we just want to kind of showcase you because you're a pretty big Porsche staple guy in the community, I feel. Well-known, very Porsche passionate. And I think, you know, like what we do is we tell stories, obviously. So I think you have a really, really good story to tell, multiple stories, not just one. So let's just get into it. So, you know, as a young man growing up, everybody has some type of story. So what is yours? How did you really get into Porsche? When was your first time when you realized you were like hooked on Porsche and you're like, I have to have one of these. I don't know what I'm going to end up doing with my life, but what I'm going to do is going to be this.
Right. Yeah. Well, you know, my father was much of a storyteller per se. He used to tell us when we were kids about this time that he drove a 550 Spider on Willow Springs.
Amazing.
Sorry, Watkins Glen. And he, you know, talked about sliding the car and all that. And you hear the story. You don't know what a 550 Spider is from a hole in the ground. Though I did have quite a bit of Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars that might have had a few of those things in there. Definitely me. And so, you know, that was my introduction to Porsche, really. You know, it was Dad telling this great story about sliding a car and so on. And
How old were you around that time frame?
Golly. Well, I think the first time he told that story, I was probably 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah. The time that he really told that story again was 73, 74. They had the IROC series, right? And you know, Porsche gave 15 of the top drivers in the world these RSRs.
Awesome cars, yeah.
Ridiculous. And so we're watching that. I think it's in the first race. And the two lead cars are flogging, and they're not that far ahead of everybody else, maybe 4 or 5 car lengths ahead. But they are neck and neck, and they're going through this little switchback area, and they ping off of each other. And when they ping off of each other, they literally pinged and went off-road.
Wow.
And so, you know, first you're seeing the first time you've ever seen a whale tail before. And you're like, what the heck is that? And then these cars separate and they go off-road and it's little over hill and dale, right? I'm expecting to see NASCAR level stuff where when they hit off the track, cars are flipping and they didn't.
Parts everywhere.
Yeah, and you were going to seeing carnage, right? Yeah. Like you were expecting to see, like this is going to be a spectacular accident.
And no accident. And these two guys drive, they full pedal into it. You can see the dirt spitting everywhere, and they come back together on the track, dicing. One gets in front of the other. Cool. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, how is this possible? What is that tail about? And Dad says, it's a Porsche. It's a rear motor. Remember me telling you about the 550 Spider? So he goes back into that tail and then starts talking about that RSR tail.
He's like, remember how good of a race car driver I was? I was telling you? That was
better,
amateur level out there, what they just did.
Right. So it was, you know, it was one of these things where you see these cars do this magnificent thing and you think, how is that possible? Okay. So do they sell these cars? And they're like, well, not that car, but they sell these things and they're called the 911. That was my introduction to it. And that was 73, 74. And then in 76, we lived in Denver at the time and I was going home from school and a car with a tail on it comes flinging by. And it was a 76 Turbo Carrera. And it was the guy that had developed the neighborhood that we lived in. And he lived at the end of our street and the garage door was open and he slings the car in. And before he could shut the garage, I'm running with books and backpack. And I get down there, slide underneath the garage door and was like, what is this?
He said, get out of here, kid.
No. The guy, he was a very generous man. And he spent a bit of time with me and talked about, you know, this is a Turbo Carrera. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's a 911. And he went through the whole thing with the tail and the downforce, except he showed me a turbo. And I was 11 years old or No, I was 76, so I was 14.
Okay.
14, 15. In 78.
And that was like space shuttle stuff anyways. Turbo technology back then. It's like,
Totally.
what is this? Like
Totally.
made by NASA?
Right. And, you know, being somewhat proficient with mathematics and science and stuff, you kind of get into the geekdom side of that.
Mm-hmm.
And in 78, I was punted up into high school. I skipped a grade, got into 10th grade, and this buddy of mine came back from England with a car magazine that had this story of what happened in 1978, where Martini Racing came to Porsche and said, hey, there's this thing called the East African Safari Rally. It's getting all this marketing. We want to go race this thing, and we want you guys to build it. And Porsche says, we're not really a rally car company. I mean, we've done some rally, but we're not really. And they're like, yeah, here's a pot of cash. And Porsche went, hey,
Sure.
We're a rally car. Yeah.
So
Here you go.
they plucked two 1978 cars, 911 SCs, off the production line, and away they built the cage, put the seats, raised the torsion bars on it, did a strut modification on the front to it, and away they went. And as the story goes, to the last day, almost the last hour, they were running 1 and 2,
Which is insane. to think
totally
about
insane. Valdegard was one of the drivers, a favored driver of mine, kind of one of those hero drivers, and both cars crashed kind of heavily. The suspensions got worked, and they kind of beat them back into place, and they limped home in second and third place.
Which is that just shows you
bad.
how far out they were. Where They were
Totally.
able to crash, repair, and still podium.
Totally.
No big deal.
Totally. And then in 84, I came back from university, was a state gal who done a little modeling, and I was like, oh, I'm going to impress her. I'll take her to the Porsche dealership. Because when I was in high school, all my buddies would go out drinking and partying and all that. Fridays and Saturday nights, if I got the car, my mom's car, I would go drive to the Porsche dealership, and I would fog those windows until somebody would be
That's
like, "All
so
right,
cool.
kid, we'll let you in."
Yeah.
And then I get to the back, and that and the Ferrari dealership.
It's
also.
you again?
Yeah, totally. So,
Jim?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Get in here, creeper.
I came back, and there was on the lot a 1984 Porsche 930, and as you guys know, the Type 930 from 1980 to 85 was not imported into the U.S.
Yeah.
And so, I'm staring at this car going, none of this makes any sense. And so English salesman came up, as the story goes. And
Riddle me this. How is this here?
yeah, well, apparently a doctor in Houston had gone to Germany, ordered the car. They drove it through Germany, and then, had it shipped
Gray
back.
marketed in.
Gray marketed it
delivery.
back in.
Okay.
Right? And so
Back when we could gray market cars in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And anyway, so I fell in love with that car. I didn't have two nickels to bump together. I was putting myself through university, doing all that stuff, and that's just not going to happen. But it was,
But it's a good dream goal, right? Like you're just like, man,
it was definitely
maybe someday, right?
one of these days, come hell or high water, and there's probably going to be a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to get that car, and then that, rally car, and then that RS. I'm going to find those cars.
Exactly.
So-
Someday we're gonna date.
Yeah. Oh man, it was.
I don't know when, but someday.
Well, my first car was a '75 VW Rabbit.
Nice.
I mean, a Scirocco.
Okay.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And totally ridiculous. 1.6 liter. I had Isky cam in it. I had a bunch of stuff, nonsense. The carburetor was this hybrid Rabbit of a 70. Part of the stage one was a 78 because the needle bearings in the thing, they were made from some unobtainium material, and so you build this hybrid stuff, and it had headers and the whole thing. And I used to go do these little autocross deals, and the trick with that, it was a front wheel drive, is that the parking brake was just for the rear. The cables went to the rear, but they also had a cable that went to the front. That was cut.
Okay.
So I'd go into a corner and then whack parking brake, get the back end around, keep your foot planted on the front and around. And everybody's like, okay, you need to take that piece of crap Scirocco out of here because you're like making some of us look bad.
Go get a real car.
Yeah.
And come back here and then kick our asses with that. Stop making us look bad.
No, it was just, a good time. But there were guys in there a couple guys that had 911s, and I watched them fishtail these cars around. And I thought, dude, you're just confirming everything that I'm going to do.
Like, here we go again.
Some age,
keep
some
showing
time.
up.
Right. So, yeah, that spun up to the cars that you guys have seen that are sitting in the stable.
So the 84 car.
Yep.
What's the story behind that then?
Yeah. So let's just say for years, maybe decades, I had, before pre-internet, I would go get like the Dallas Morning News classifieds and just kind of look like some mysterious guy is going to sell a Type 930 and it's going to be $10. And I'm going to be the guy that's going to get it.
There's going to be an estate sale,
Right.
and some really old, nice lady's going to be like, young man, just take the car. And
Right.
you're going to be like, I'm going to be that guy someday.
Exactly.
Not happening.
I'd been in a series of startups and was in a company that we kind of blew up, did an incredible job, some great people in the company, and I had a little bit of cash, and I thought, God, I remember back when, so I'm going to really start looking, and but it had to be this particular color and this particular year. And so I had this alert set up. This thing on eBay bounces, and I look at it and I'm like, wait a minute. That car looks awfully familiar.
It's happening.
And
I've seen this girl
back
before.
in the shelves over there. I have a photo book, and in the photo book, there were 4 pictures in there of a 930, same color, same year. And I'm thinking, man, this just can't be. So I call the guy up. Said, hey, tell me a little bit about the car. He said, well, it doesn't leak oil. It doesn't. I was, no,
Like,
no,
I don't
no.
care about all that.
No, yeah.
Where'd it come from?
Where'd it come from? Well, I bought it from a guy in New York, and I ended up tracking that guy down when it was the purchase deal was supposed to happen. I tracked that guy down, and where'd you get it? He's like, oh, I was at an oil conference in Houston, Texas, and there was this 930. The dealership couldn't sell the car, but the guy was a good enough customer, so he said, how about if I park the car here, and then you just give somebody my card, right? That's how that far away guy had come up and gotten the car. And then he bought from the dealership a 911
I see.
SC at the time. And so you're tracing it all the way back, and I'm like, unbelievable. So, and I didn't know that at the time. I just said, tell me, and he didn't have enough of the history and all those things.
You had to do some digging to
But I had to do some
get to that.
But
point.
After I bought
lined
it.
up.
Okay.
After I bought it. It was like.
So it was like a continued study after you had the
Totally.
car. Okay.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then it ended up being the one. It's like, wait a minute.
Well,
I know you. You and I have had an encounter before.
I have a side story to that. I have a Schuco Ferrari Grand Prix car model.
okay.
Right? And I don't know what scale it is. It's about yay in size. And when I was in university, my mother sends a mail, snail mail, handwritten, says, "Hey, we're going to be moving from this place to this place. We're going to get rid of all the things that you don't want. If there are things in your bedroom that you want, tell us. We'll save it in boxes." So the mail, snail mail, never made it to me, and Mom gave away all my stuff. Well, in there was my prized possession of that Ferrari car, this Schuco model car, and the car, you can totally take the car apart. It has a little wind-up key in the back to it, and full suspension and steering and all this stuff. And I used to take that car apart 1,000 times. And this one time, my mother said to me at the kitchen table, "You are not to take that car apart on this table. You're going to knock something over." And sure as shinola, I hit a water glass. It fell on it. And do you remember in the day of the old models, they were a water-based sticker?
Oh,
So
yeah.
Right? You dipped them in, and then you applied, and then you
and you got dried on it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, that's what these stickers were. And so the water hit it, and I picked it up, and I bent one of the stickers.
Oh, no.
Right? So fast forward, it was less than 7-8 years ago. I thought, that model meant a lot to me when I was a kid. It was given to me by my godmother, my mother's sister in Germany. And I thought I'm just gonna. There's got to be some model like that out there, and I'll just buy one of those things as a remembrance to it. So a guy in Chicago has one on eBay, and on eBay, he showed like 5 pictures, and one of the pictures was on the side of the sticker, and I'm like, "There's no way." So I pinged the guy and said, "Hey, you need to tell me about this car. Where did you get it?" He said, "Well, I got it from a guy who got it in Houston from like Salvation Army or something." No, Mom gave us stuff away to Salvation Army or something. And I'm like, "So just name the price. Don't make me bid on this stuff because I'm going to use Auction Sniper and I'm just going to win it because Auction Sniper is a server-to-server transaction. I've never lost an auction when auctionsniper.com.
You just got it. You got the secret. You got the secret.
So he was like, "No, I think it's going to be worth this." I'm like, "Great, I'll pay it." Well, it might be worth more than that. So anyway, I auction sniped it, won it, got the car, and it was one of those things, from back when you were a kid that just means a lot.
Yeah.
The story of those things are
so
important.
So you're telling me eBay is your portal to finding all of these. So there's this girl I used to date back in the day. Can you find her on eBay again? And maybe if we put an alert out and then we sniper bid her, we can win her instantly. And because you were pretty successful so far with eBay, man.
Yes.
Wow.
Probably some laws against that.
You have, man, you have the stars aligned for you to find these things, your prized things that
it's amazing. Like some of the lights that I have these very rare. They say rally on it. I got them from the French eBay site from a German living in Italy who put them up, and I immediately got on there and sent a message and said, "Hey, how much for those things?" And he was, I don't know yet. We'll see what the market brings. I'm like, just name a price, and I'll. Yeah. He wouldn't do it, so you just use Auction Sniper and you set your deal.
Done.
Well, what you do is you set the last. You tell it that you want to do your price 2 seconds before the end, and that's why bring a trailer. If you set
it keeps going. It goes like 2 minutes, 3 minute, whatever. Yeah.
And eBay don't change that. eBay, it's a server-to-server transaction, and it's just like
done,
wins it. So you get lights that are. I saw.
So I've lost things probably to you.
Probably. I've had people, message when you could intermessage between people. Message me and be like, "Dude, what did you do the last 3 seconds? All of a sudden,
scumbag.
And I was trying to put the numbers in, and you can't."
He's like, "Beat you to it."
Yeah, technology, dude.
Yeah,
it's a wonder.
Yeah, beat you. So, how long have you been with the 84 now?
Yeah.
So when I turned 50, I'm 58 now, so 8 years. Right when I turned 50, I was like, I'm gonna get serious, and then I, found the car, got it.
That's awesome.
Then 28 days later, as soon as I got that, I was like, all right, I got to start looking for these other things.
Yeah.
So 28 days later.
He's like,
having some good
all right,
luck
the seal's
here.
broken. Let's keep it rolling now.
So I found this RSR online. That one, I can't remember where I found it. It was not on eBay. And
Not in Texas.
The guy was something to do with Road Atlanta. He had it in Road Atlanta. He had written something, maybe I'm not sure what. It was a forum where the guy was talking about that he was going to sell it, and I immediately pinged him and said, "Hey, man, how much do you want for the car? And tell me about it," and so on to it. And then that was 28 days later, and then 2.8 years later, the Safari Rally car opportunity opened up, and it was like, okay, I have the trifecta of cars: the road car, the track car, and the off-road car.
And that's awesome. I know we talked offline a lot about that too. And I want to transition into you have a really big motorcycle and biking background too, and how that kind of kept you in translated to 911 for you.
Totally. Actually, there are a couple pieces to it. So as a kid in university, I raced track. I raced road bike, and then also raced mountain bike. Yeah. And so, I don't know why this trifecta of stuff keeps popping up in my life. And I transitioned from that to after university. It was like, okay, I don't want to weigh 138 pounds anymore. 2.2% body fat and all the rest of it. And it takes an immense amount of time. So I started getting motorcycles, and I kind of built a collection. I built way too many I had too many of those motorcycles in the collection, I should say. But really the trifecta of those, and I'm winnowing the whole thing down to 3. I've got a Husaberg. KTM bought Husaberg, and then they killed them off when they bought another. I won't even name the company that makes me so mad that they killed Husaberg off. I have a Husaberg as a motocross bike. So done a lot of racing around with that.
I saw the helmets when we came in.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Then I have a Ducati 916. That was actually my second bike. My first one was the very first Kawasaki 900 Ninja, which was the first kind of bullet bike that was ever made. 84.
Yeah.
And 84 is probably all these numbers. I should probably go out and do the lottery.
Exactly. 28, 84.
Put all those numbers down,
exactly.
and I'm going to win everything, and then I'll come back. And anyway, so. So I have a Ducati 916. It's been ported up to a 955, which was Fogarty's bike. I did a lot of track day stuff with that. And then what arguably is not the best road bike and not the best off-road bike, but the best long distance that does both of those things, the Bmw R1200 Gsa, which is what Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman used to go do long way down in, I don't know what that was, 5-6 years ago or so. So those 3 bikes, when you're doing off-road, as you guys know, as you've done off-road bikes, if you're standing on the pegs and you go pigeon-toed, and if you're going to go right, you stick your left knee kind of in the tank, you move your hip into it, you whack throttle, you get the back end going slideways, and you don't go through the corner like you're on a road or a track. You go literally slideways with that back end going around, and you kind of scoot your butt back on the bike, and so you're positioning the weight over that rear, and your front really isn't. I mean, I call it rear steering, right? You're rear steering through the
pretty much.
So
you're steering through the throttle essentially.
Totally, 100% through the throttle.
Yeah.
So my transition from going really a lot of motorcycling. I mean, the BMW, I've got 40-something thousand miles of riding up in the Appalachians, on road and off road, and in the Husaberg, just tons of riding around on that, and of course the Ducati doing several years of track, and I had a Derby, a little Tiddler. You would appreciate this. You know the class of Tiddler racing?
No.
So in Europe, Tiddler racing was the 49cc to 72cc bikes, right? Which were hugely popular. They came out of World War II, where they started, building Vespas or Vespa-like bikes, and because they were cheap transportation, could take people everywhere, and with bombed-out infrastructure, they became kind of the de rigueur of stuff. And so they progressed. What's the saying? When's the first time racing was done with motorcycles or cars? Yeah. When the second one was produced.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
When there was 2 of them,
let's go racing.
Exactly.
So
I'm faster than you. You're like, no, you're not.
Well, I started racing Semra, which had a Tiddler class, a little 49cc and a 72cc class, and I built this Derby as a Metro kit, and it gave me unbelievable capability to kind of transition, because I wasn't really the fastest guy on that bike, and it's 13,000 RPM.
That's crazy.
It winds up. It's a 2-smoke. Exactly. But I wasn't really the fastest guy out there. Not really. I wasn't the fastest guy out there. And a buddy of mine said, you need to go off-road racing. You go get yourself a dirt bike, do that, and come back. So I spent a year and a half, and I came back, and I went from the last 10% to the top 10% doing the racing stuff to it. But it's a lot of that fear factor when you're, when the front end starts to tuck and slide a little bit, and you're going through a corner and your knees down, and you're doing that stuff, you go, okay, I totally got this, because you're in a controlled crash in a motocross bike, right?
But if you don't have enough experience of that, you're in the butt pucker moment. You're like,
Totally.
I'm probably going to die now because I'm in an uncontrolled slide.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to control it. So.
100%. Yeah, it was an interesting learning experience. But when I got the Safari Rally, and a good friend of mine who you guys met today, Joe Frazier. Joe helped me secure that car from a friend of ours, mutual friend of ours, and then we had to go fix a ton of stuff and make this thing a real competent and competitive Safari Rally car.
Yeah.
But do it like back in I didn't want any of the coilovers or any of the other new stuff on there. What was it like?
Yeah.
To go in 1978?
Like this SC, like you mentioned, where they just took a bone stock one, did minimal stuff to it, and just gave it hell, basically.
Yeah. What was that like? What did it take to do what they did? Which no matter how much time and I could spend with it, hero status of Bjorn Valdegard and all the rest of the guys that raced in that era. What they were able to do with those cars was just masterful, absolutely masterful. But I wanted to know, what did it take to do this?
Yeah, and it's also a testament of build quality, right? Like, because it was put through the rigors.
100%.
Like, it was just being beaten on and destroyed while it was out there, and it lasted that long from the factory. It wasn't usually, like you see, when people do the Baja 1000, they go to this special place and they build this 1,000 horsepower rig. It's got $150,000 worth of suspension, all this articulating stuff, so it can survive the race, and then they still don't survive.
Right. Arguably the Baja 1000 is its own level of crazy and
true.
And special, and they need full kitted monster trucks and the rest of those
and
things.
The drivers and the co-pilots are insane also. So I think it takes you have to fail a sanity test. You have to be crazy to
totally.
You win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What's this look like? A pear. What's this look like? A pear. It's like everything's like, all right, you're crazy. Let's go. Because I just showed you a banana, a moon, and a
monkey.
And you called them all pears.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, that Safari car you have is amazing, though.
It is.
It's I mean, there are definitely more competent cars that are built out there. The guys like, and what we talked about earlier, guys like Kelly Moss Road and Race.
Yeah,
I mean,
Kelly Moss does some amazing
Willie,
stuff.
That black car that they made, and then the Mike's car that they made, and they're in the midst of another one. That's serious. Lee Keen makes a competent car also. And then you got guys like T.J. Russell, which I think his start at 650, and it's
exactly.
I mean, it's got 30 inches of travel, and you've seen that thing hitting the ruts and going over them like
Yeah, it's one of those where you could actually like jump it off a loading dock and it'll be fine. And it's
crazy, crazy.
Like, what just happened here?
Well, and I love seeing all these different people taking it to every height and level to it. But for mine, I really wanted to hearken it back to the 1978, and
well, it meant something to you. Like
totally.
When you read that article, like you said, like tying that back, it resonated with you to the level of, okay, I want to maybe
the experience out of it.
Feel what they felt back then now, and see what that may be like. Even if it's just 3/10 of it, at least I'm getting a taste of it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, a little funny side story on that. While Joe was building the car, I got a steering wheel, pedals, and all that. Bought. There was one game called Rally. Then I don't know. I had 3 or 4 different rally games, and so the one thing I wanted to be able to do with the car almost immediately was I got to figure out how to do the Scandinavian flick. Then, as they call the brake pedal the coward pedal, I was like, I'm not using that. I got to be able to figure out how to do this with doing the Scandinavian flick. So I literally practiced for 3 months on all these different rally games on how to like
prepping yourself to
totally so
just to slide it properly.
Joe gets the car done, and the first thing I did was head to Hutchinson Island and give it a flog and just about wrap that damn thing around a tree.
This is nothing like the simulator.
Well, it was close. I was, I
didn't pee on myself when I did this before. What is happening?
Well, the part that wasn't engineered correctly was in the driver's seat, and that was me.
Yeah.
So
operator. Oh, that was the
operator
problem.
error. Totally. So I figured out, okay, I don't need to go as fast to it. You do that quick pitch in opposite direction, let off pedal, put your foot back into it while the car is rotating, and just like the Husaberg or any off-road motorcycle, your rear steering essentially.
Yeah.
You whack throttle, that back end starts to come around, and you use that, and your steering. You could just about do it with your two little fingers.
When I first started learning how to slide, isn't it so like counterproductive when your brain starts to think of something, you turn the wheel into the slide that you're going into. So you're pointing at the slide, and you're like, this makes no sense. Like I should be pointing away from it. You're like, no, unless you want the car to just totally tail out on you, turn the wheel into it, then you'll continue to slide out. Just throttle in, and you're like, I don't understand the physics of this, but fine.
Well, for me, it was a lot like motorcycles too, because on the Ducati at Roebling Road, the fast guys are about $1.15 into the corner. I would pucker my leathers at about $1.07, but when you go into it, you go past 5, 4, at 3. You've shifted from 6 because you're fully wound up, 6, 5, and 4, and then you're in 3, and you start your pitch over on the bike. And as you start to pitch over, knees dragging, you got the hockey puck on your knee to it. So you pitch over, and if you're doing it right, your rear is actually spinning up a little bit faster than you're traveling, and your front's in a little bit of a slide. Tires so overheated, and the contact patch, as you guys know, on a motorcycle, when you're leaned over, is
millimeters.
like that.
Yeah, millimeters.
Right? Car is like that, and a motorcycle's like that. So, you learn this kind of ballet of it, and you get used to the bike sliding around underneath you. People watch MotoGP and they go, "Oh, it looks so easy," because they're just side to side to side. I'm like, no, that bike is sliding. You may not see it from the angle, but the bike,
because the rotation is so fast, you don't see it, but it's just literally like sliding around out there.
And in the off road, you're either the front or the rear is in a slide as you're going through those corners. What to me was magnificent was that Porsche could take a 911 SC 1978, take it off the production line, put a cage in it, put seats in it, do the modification on the strut, which is essentially take the spindle and drop it down, re-weld that piece to it, put the control arm at the top, and do the modification on the torsion bar in the rear, or modification, adjust it so you've got enough height to it. 78, they did a deal where it didn't allow the spindle on the shock to be pulled completely out if it got big air. So they had a restraining strap that went around it. I haven't done that on mine, but I'm not interested in going big air. But
jumping.
Well, that they could take this, and I've got pictures of the car, getting there and stuff, but that they could take this car with torsion bar, no coilover suspension and all the stuff that you have today, and almost take away, steal the silverware, so to speak, at the East African Safari Rally.
Yeah.
It really says the competency of a car, that you could have a car that does in what I say in essentially is the trifecta of things, right? Can do track, can do road, and can do off-road, and all at pace. Not tootling, but at pace, and do all of them winning everything
above par. Yeah, exactly. That's we talked about that too offline, talking about it. A Swiss Army knife as a 911.
Totally,
it's literally
that's a great way to say it.
Just everything working. Go dominate on a track, on a tarmac where it's like perfectly paved, or if you're going to go safari and you want to go win a rally, or if you just want to do road racing and you want to go cruise around and do spirited mountain driving, it's good at all that stuff. And it's very rare to have one singular car from a brand that basically, in a sense, if you could just change its shoes and suspension and all that kind of stuff, it becomes something else.
Totally.
I mean, there's really not a whole lot out there. It can maybe do two. It can do the street work and the track work, but okay, now you add the element of off-road. Like, can your car go off-road? Can it do all those things? It's it doesn't really do that.
And
stuff.
with excuse me, with essentially minimal alterations on the car.
Yeah.
I mean, any car, I guess you could say, oh yeah, I'll bolt these big things on, and
of
we'll
course,
go off-road.
with enough fabrication, anything's possible, right?
Yeah, but this with next to nothing for the modification. It, to me, was just astounding that one car could do all of those things.
And honestly, if you did had the one car and you had all the components that you needed, like if you had the toolbox and the means and the capability, you could take the one car.
Totally.
For example, if you took your Safari car, you could take it and then take it all down and then, you know, take it to the track on the tarmac and run it there, and then take all of that stuff that you ran it on that tarmac, you know, the slicks that you ran on there on the track, and then put it back out for the Safari stuff off-road. And you could put normal tires back on it for street use. And you could really do it all with one car if you had the means and the mechanical capability to just interchange the stuff.
Now, what I will tell you is, if you took that Safari rally car and did that with it, I would be a complete idiot on the track. I'd be like, yeah, we're sliding it through the corners, and I'll get the Scandinavian flick through. And the rest of the racers would be like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Get off the track.
Why are you
Go
drifting
away.
this thing around this corner, stupid? You need to hook and go. Hook and go.
Well, I
Just chewed up 10 seconds doing that display of speed you just did.
But how did it look? It looked great.
yeah,
Amazing,
right,
though.
right.
Did you get a picture?
Well, I told that story earlier when we were at lunch. The RSR, you know, a good friend of mine, Andy Green, had done the initial work on it. Joe Frazier is going to do this next thing because I want to take that car and go race the La Carrera Panamericana.
That's an awesome
but,
race.
But the first time we got it all set up and we did a track day, I was lucky to have Wayne Brown as my trackside support.
I'll drive the rescue vehicle behind you.
Well, so the car's kind of absurd. So from the firewall forward, all the metal's been cut out and it's tube frame. And from essentially the rear seats backwards, all that metal's been cut out and it's tube frame. And the you know, it's so unbelievably light because the body, save for the top and the bottom, is fiberglass. So it weighs 1,600.
That's so ridiculous.
1,686 pounds wet with me in it.
That's insane.
So the first day we're going out, and I do 3 laps, and I pull what I think was a very, very respectable time, 124 out at Roebling. You know, 3-liter PMO carbs, built motor, blah blah blah, and come back in, and Wayne's looking at me like, what the is wrong with you? And I said, you know, the rear feels like it's setting in wrong. So we put it on scales. He weight balances. It sends me back out. And, you know, he can see from the pit in or the pit out area looking down and seeing how I'm entering the corner. And he's
Your
like,
apex is all off.
what are you doing? And then he walked to the back side. What the hell are you doing? So I had GoPros in the car, and he says, let's see the GoPros. Pull it up on my Surface, and he looks at the things. He's like, what the hell are you doing with your legs? So turn 1 at Roebling is a right turn, and my right knee is smacking the gear shift because I'm trying to put it down like a motorcycle. And then turn 3 is a left turn, and I'm smacking the door with my left knee. And he's like, what? And I'm moving my body like you would on a motorcycle, right? So I didn't get
Muscle memory
fully...
can't get it out of there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wasn't fully strapped in, and he's like, all right, we're going to solve this stuff. And then he's looking at the lines. He's like, what are you driving? And I realized, oh, these are motorcycle lines. These are not car lines.
Yeah.
So once I got my head back into the stuff to it, you know, but I tell you, quasi doing those half motorcycle lines, half car lines, and loving the feel of the car starting to rotate, right? You come into the brake zone markers, and I go deep, smack brake, get the suspension settled, and then start my pitch in and be back on power while the back end is wanting to rotate.
Yeah.
Right? Come around, and you use that like you use a dirt bike.
Yeah.
Right?
A lot of similarity there.
So going through the corners to it, I probably could have gone faster if I wasn't trying motorcycle lines and motorcycle
I was gonna ask
techniques.
if you changed it, was there any
Well,
benefits?
Yeah.
the benefits were I came back in with the biggest shit-eating grin known to humankind.
Exactly. It's like,
Right?
that's what it's supposed to do.
Yeah. Well, you know, and Wayne was like, yeah, okay, right. These lines they're not right. And
Nice.
and arguably they weren't, but it was a tremendous amount of.
So you want to run the La Carrera with the RSR car? Is that
Yeah,
what you
so
wanna do?
right now it has no brake lights, has no headlights, has no windshield wipers. It's you know, essentially a plastic windshield and rear too. So that you have to have it has to be a registered vehicle to go do it. So I've got to get all that stuff done. Arguably the suspension right now, I think I'm running 400, 600 pound springs, 400 in the front, 600 in the rear. When I got the car, it was set up with 800 square for Daytona. Right. Anyway, so I've got to get the suspension so it's not as low because you're not on a track. The La Carrera in its day from 1950 to 56, which is the same time as the Mille Miglia. It was 50 to 54 was the Mille Miglia, but 50 to 56 was the original of it. And that race, I mean, we talk about how passionate Americans are of car racing. We're nothing compared to Mexico.
I know.
The Mexicans, they have, they've got a real Formula One race. They have a real WRC World Rally Championship race, and then all kinds of incredible
Are you familiar
stuff.
with John Benton?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Benton race.
We talked to him a lot. So he preps a lot of cars for that race. That's why when you said that, we instantly perked up because we're good friends with him. And I was like, he should set your car up because he is good at it.
Yeah.
Really good at it.
They raced that 356.
Yep. And he's prepped a couple 911Ss also that run in that race. And he's super familiar with that race, like the back of his hand. I mean, I think he ran it for almost like 12 years consistently. Like,
right.
In some fashion, like prepping the car, as a chase vehicle or whatever to support the peoples that he prepped. So he's very, very familiar. But you're absolutely right. He described it. He's like, dude, it's nuts. They love it. And he's like, Americans would never come out and stand by the side of the road like they do, and watch that stuff.
No. And you go back in history and you see the winnings of it. The word carrera is Spanish, comes from the La Carrera Panamericana. And the complete nuttery of that, where they would be flogging the cars through town. Now, my car wouldn't be. I couldn't if I could, which is I couldn't. I don't have that racing skill to it. But if my times were the fastest, you couldn't win the overall with that car because it has to be an error correct from 50 to 56. But they have a bunch of other classifications that allow you to be able to run cars in it. So, but there's a different kind of setup you have to do for that because you're 1 second on a highway, the next second you're in a town with regular roads and dips and bumps and all that stuff. So if you took that thing, I'm the front air dam on that might last 100 feet.
See you.
So, but just to be able to go do that.
Strike me as a Peking to Paris kind of guy. Like I want to get you to do that just so I can say like I knew somebody who did that race.
Well, I followed and I think John set up. What's the guy's name that owns 4 Till 4 in Phoenix? Coffee shop.
I know what you're talking about.
I think he took a 912 that John set up.
Absolutely right. Yeah, he did.
And in that race there were,
and that was like his dream to do that.
Right.
So cool that he did it.
We had a book. I got the chance to talk with him. My mother for a time was in Phoenix, and took her to one of the their little cars and coffee events that they do, and they do it all the time. It's not just like on Saturdays, first of the month. It's every weekend. There's something going on. Yeah. And that's where I met Chris from TurboCraft. And anyway, I went there, and he told me that he was going to do the La Carrera, and I was like, oh, that's great. So I'm listening to him talk, and they have a little small room like the size of this library. Just off of where you order your coffee, and on there are books about the La Carrera Panamericana. Nice. I'm like, okay, so he wasn't blowing smoke up anybody's skirt. He's going to go do this thing. So they did, and I think that same year, which was 2 years ago, there were 5 or 6 other 911s doing the deal.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting one for sure.
Yeah. I'd be a little nervous to do Peking to Paris though, because like you're really out there on an island when you do that, because you whoever you bring with you better be the mechanic / engineer / everything.
Right. Do all.
Yeah. It's like, okay, suspension broke. What are we gonna do? Well, we've got some gum and duct tape. Like so.
Well, I
and you chewed up the last pieces of gum, so we actually only have one piece left.
That's how this works.
So the Ramsey Potts, who works for RM Sotheby's, when I told him that someday I'm going to go do the La Carrera Panamericana, he's like, well, Dr. Frank Perry, he lives here in up in Beaufort. He won it in an error correct. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And Richard, what's his name? Who built the car? We just made him an ODC member. Mickey, yes,
Okay.
Mickey Carter was his mechanic. That was our studio audience, by the way.
Yeah,
Over there,
exactly.
Richard Pappy, who.
Pappy.
Anyway, so he introduces me to the doctor, and we went and had lunch, and then he shows me the car. And
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of P-Car Talk. Connect with us on Instagram at P-Car Talk or online at pcartalk.com.